Okay, this is a question from the GCSE Mathematics Numeracy paper, Unit 1, Intermediate Tier. So it's non-calculator because it's Unit 1. And it's about conversion graphs. So let's have a look. Okay, Marcus is a farmer. He has his own conversion graph to change between acres and square yards. So that's what the conversion graph's for. Acres and square yards. To change between those two things. And there we can see the full graph. We have square yards on the vertical axis and we have acres on the horizontal axis. What I always do before I even read the question is make sure I understand the scale and fill in some figures that might help us. So if 20 little squares is equal to 1 acre, then I know at this point we have 0.5 acres. And at this point we have 1.5. At this point we have 2.5. Now that might come in handy later on. Looking at the scale as well, we've got 10 squares is 2,420. So it's going up in 2,420s of square yards. So each little square is 2,420 divided by 10. So each square is 242. Okay, so one little square, I'm going to just make a note of that, is 242. Up to that one square. Okay. Let's have a look at the question. Complete each of the following statements. 3 acres is equal to something square yards. 1 mark. Okay, so it's going to be right or wrong. There's no marks there for method. And the second part says 5.5 acres is equal to something square yards. Now there's 2 marks for that. So there must be a bit of working out first in order to get the 2 marks. 1 mark for the method, 1 mark for the answer. So let's have a look at our graph and see if we can work out what 3 acres is in square yards. Okay, let's have a look. Well, we've got 3 acres on our acres axis, and when we go up to look at the conversion graph, there's no graph there. But we can see if we carried on extending that graph, now I'm just going to do this roughly to there, then 3 acres would be this point here, and then we'd read across to this point here, looking at how many square yards 3 acres was. Well, I looked at earlier the scale on the vertical axis. Every 2,420 square yards. So all is add 2,420 at 12,100, and we'll get that figure there. Really speaking, at this stage, you should be able to do this in your head, but if you need to, just do it on the side. 12,100 plus 2,000 is 14,100, plus the 400 is 14,500, and the 20, 14,520. And that is what, if we go up to the curve in that direction and then across in that direction, let's do that a bit neater. Let's have a look wobbled on my that. Go across, then we get to 14,000. So let's put that in. 520, nice and clear. Okay, there's our mark for that. Right, 5.5 acres is equal to how many square yards? So again, we've got to look at the acres axis, and we can see we haven't got 5.5 on there. So what are we going to do? Well, what we do is use a combination of the numbers of acres we do have and add them up to get 5.5 acres. Because this is a straight line conversion graph, then the rate at which it goes up will always be the same. So 2 acres on there and 4 acres will be double what 2 acres is. Okay, if we carried on the graph. So what we can do, to get 5.5 acres, we can read off 3 acres, and I've written that in 2.5 acres, because when you put those two together, you get 5.5 acres. Now, we already know what it is for 3 acres, 14,520. So I'm going to put that in. So I'm going to show my working during, say 5.5 acres is the same as 3 plus 2.5 acres. Now we know for 3 acres that was 14,520. Now we need to look at it for 2.5 acres and see what that says on the graph. Well, if we go up our line here to there, and then when we hit the graph we go across, we can see clearly it's 12,100. So 2.5 acres is 12,100, and then when we add those two together we get 26,620. And if you need to just do that on the side with columns just to make sure you don't make a mistake, it's non-calc, then do so. I'm going to just put that there and then write my answer in there so it's clear for the examiner to see, because there's a space for our answer, so let's use it. So there we have it. So this is a typical sort of using a conversion graph question. First part is just use the graph that's in front of you, and the figure they want is usually on the graph. The second part is usually a figure that's not on the axes, and you have to use a combination of two of the amounts from the axis in order to get the answer like we did there. So to do 5.5 acres we used 3 and 2.5, which is obviously equal to 5.5. Alright, thank you very much.